Every day across Mississippi, inmates vanish from county jails and reappear behind the razor wire of Parchman, often without warning, without explanation, and without anyone knowing what happened in between. This is the hidden world of inmate transfers, a system that operates in the shadows but shapes thousands of lives. When people hear about an inmate being moved to Mississippi State Penitentiary, better known as Parchman, the first question is almost always the same: why was he transferred? The truth is that every transfer has a story behind it, and each story reflects the complex, often unseen machinery of Mississippi's correctional system. These transfers are not random, nor are they simply the result of administrative preference. Instead, they arise from a combination of legal, logistical, and safety-driven factors that shape how every inmate's journey unfolds. To understand the transfer system, you must understand the reasons that push and pull inmates through different facilities, ultimately leading many to the gates of Parchman. One of the most common reasons for transfers is overcrowding in county jails. Many county jails across Mississippi were never built to handle long-term incarceration. They were designed for temporary holding, days or weeks, not months or years. Yet, due to slow court processes, rising arrest rates, and budget constraints, inmates often sit in county jails far longer than expected. Once these facilities reach capacity, sheriffs request transfers to the Mississippi Department of Corrections, MDOC. Parchman, being one of the largest and most resource-equipped prisons in the state, becomes a primary destination. It acts as a pressure valve for the entire system. When county facilities overflow, MDOC steps in and relocates inmates to prevent unsafe or inhumane conditions that could lead to lawsuits or federal intervention. Another significant factor is security classification changes. Every inmate is assigned a classification level based on behavior, charges, gang affiliation, mental health status, and perceived risk. These classifications are not permanent. They can rise or fall depending on an inmate's conduct, court decisions, or updates to their risk assessment. If a county jail cannot safely house someone who has been reclassified as a higher risk, perhaps due to violent behavior, gang conflicts, or escape attempts, that inmate is transferred to a facility like Parchman, which is built to handle higher security populations. Conversely, some inmates may be transferred out of Parchman if they earn a lower classification through good behavior, allowing them to move to a regional facility with more programming or lower restrictions. One of the more sensitive reasons for transfers involves medical or behavioral needs. County jails have extremely limited medical resources. They often lack full-time physicians, mental health professionals, or specialized equipment. When an inmate requires advanced care, such as long-term mental health treatment, chronic disease management, or ongoing medical monitoring, the county may request that MDOC relocate the individual to Parchman, where there are more comprehensive medical units. Although these units may still be stretched thin, they are significantly better equipped than local facilities. Transfers for medical reasons can happen urgently, sometimes in the middle of the night, especially if an inmate's condition deteriorates or if specialized psychiatric care is required. Another major driver of transfers is court orders or legal decisions. Judges have the authority to mandate where an inmate should be held, especially in cases involving sentencing changes, probation violations, or pending appeals. If a judge orders that an inmate be moved from a county jail into MDOC custody, that transfer must happen, regardless of space constraints or logistical inconvenience. These court-directed transfers are non-negotiable, and Parchman often receives individuals because it remains one of the state's primary long-term housing facilities. Additionally, when inmates are awaiting transport to court appearances in different counties, MDOC may temporarily relocate them to Parchman for security or scheduling efficiency. Disciplinary issues can also trigger a transfer. If an inmate repeatedly breaks rules in a county jail or smaller facility, fighting, contraband possession, refusing to comply, or posing a danger to staff, administrators may request that MDOC remove the individual. Smaller jails simply do not have the staff or equipment to manage high-disruption inmates. Parchman, with its layered security units and more rigid structure, can separate individuals who need tighter supervision. Some inmates are moved specifically to isolation-ready units where officers have specialized training in handling aggressive or volatile behavior. Transfers also occur because of gang-related concerns. Mississippi prisons, like many across the U.S., face ongoing challenges with gang activity. When conflicts erupt between groups, or when intelligence suggests that an inmate may be targeted by rival factions, MDOC may relocate them for their own safety or to prevent violence. Sometimes inmates are moved to break up alliances or prevent retaliatory actions. Parchman, due to its segmented housing units and monitoring capabilities, becomes a key destination for managing these delicate situations. A lesser-known but critical reason for transfers involves program availability. Certain rehabilitation programs, vocational training, substance abuse treatment, faith-based courses, and re-entry preparation are only offered at specific MDOC locations. If an inmate qualifies for or requests a program offered at Parchman, MDOC may transfer them specifically for that purpose. These program-based transfers can influence parole decisions, sentence adjustments, or court recommendations. Finally, the logistics of population balance across the MDOC system affect transfer decisions. MDOC continuously monitors which prisons have open beds, which units are under renovation, and which facilities are facing staff shortages. Transfers are sometimes made simply to stabilize the system, moving inmates where resources allow, adjusting numbers for safety, or placing individuals in facilities that match their needs more effectively. Understanding how transfers to Mississippi State Penitentiary, Parchman, work requires a clear picture of the Mississippi Department of Corrections, MDOC, the agency that controls every movement, classification, and placement of inmates throughout the state. MDOC is far more than a single office or a group of officers. It is a complete system made up of administrators, transportation units, classification teams, facility wardens, medical staff, intelligence officers, and regional coordinators. Together, they operate a statewide network that determines where inmates live, how they are supervised, and when they are moved. To fully understand the transfer system, you must understand how deeply MDOC shapes the journey of every inmate entering state custody. At the center of this system is MDOC's central office, located in Jackson. This is where high-level decisions are made, policies are issued, and data is analyzed. While the public may imagine transfers being handled by local officers making quick decisions, the reality is highly centralized. Every transfer, even routine ones, must be approved, logged, and scheduled through MDOC channels. The central office manages a digital inmate tracking system that contains each individual's history, security level, disciplinary record, medical needs, and housing restrictions. This system updates in real time and allows MDOC to determine, with precision, where an inmate should be placed based on statewide availability. When the system flags a change in risk level, medical status, or housing unit capacity, MDOC planners immediately begin preparing for a potential transfer. One of the most critical components of MDOC is the classification division. These specialists evaluate inmates at intake and throughout their sentences. Classification officers do not simply assign a number or label. They analyze a complex mix of factors: criminal charges, sentence length, behavior in custody, gang affiliation indicators, mental health reports, and even feedback from county sheriffs. Transfers to Parchman often originate from decisions made in this division. If an inmate is deemed too high risk for a regional facility, or if their security score increases due to misconduct, the classification team updates their status and initiates a transfer request. These decisions are not based on personal judgment alone but follow a structured scoring system designed to match inmates with the appropriate level of supervision. In addition to classification, MDOC operates a dedicated transportation and logistics unit, often referred to simply as transport. This unit is responsible for the physical movement of inmates across Mississippi. The team includes trained correctional officers who specialize in secure movement, route planning, and emergency procedures. These officers coordinate schedules with county jails, state prisons, and medical centers. When an inmate is approved for transfer, the transportation unit receives a movement order that includes the inmate's identity, security classification, restrictions, required restraints, housing unit destination, and any medical notes such as medication needs or mobility issues. Transport officers must follow strict protocol, ensuring vehicles are locked, inspected, and staffed with the proper number of personnel. The movement is then logged with MDOC Command, which monitors transport activity for accountability and safety. Another vital part of MDOC's operation is the Intelligence and Investigations Division, known internally as Security Threat Group, STG, Intelligence. This division focuses on monitoring gang involvement, interpersonal conflicts, escape risks, and any potential threats that may arise inside or outside prison walls. Their information often drives transfer decisions in ways the public never sees. For example, if intelligence officers discover brewing tension between factions inside a county jail or regional facility, they may recommend the relocation of specific inmates to avoid violence. Parchman, with its multiple units and structure, becomes a strategic placement option in these cases. Intelligence-driven transfers are often urgent and require rapid coordination. MDOC also oversees the facility wardens and regional superintendents, who manage the day-to-day operations of prisons across the state. These wardens provide feedback to the central office about staffing levels, available bed space, unit conditions, and operational concerns that affect transfers. If a facility is understaffed or undergoing repairs, the warden may request that MDOC halt incoming transfers or temporarily move inmates elsewhere. This is especially relevant at Parchman, where certain units may be at capacity while others are under renovation or restructuring. MDOC uses this ongoing information to determine how each facility can safely absorb new arrivals. Another important element under MDOC is the Medical and Mental Health Services Division. This division works with contracted healthcare providers to manage the physical and psychological needs of inmates. If an inmate requires specialized treatment, dialysis, chronic care, psychiatric evaluation, or long-term medication management, the medical division may request that the individual be transferred to a unit that can provide better access to these services. Since Parchman contains designated medical areas and a larger medical staff than most regional facilities, it becomes a primary placement destination for inmates with serious or ongoing health needs. MDOC also operates an administrative review and records unit, responsible for verifying documents, updating sentence calculations, processing parole recommendations, and coordinating court transports. When legal changes occur, such as updated sentencing orders, court decisions, or appeal outcomes, this unit ensures inmate records are corrected accordingly. Sometimes these adjustments require moving an inmate to a new facility that fits their updated category. If an inmate's sentence changes from county-level oversight to state-level custody, MDOC steps in and coordinates the transfer to an appropriate institution, often Parchman due to its capacity and long-term housing function. Overall, MDOC's role in inmate transfers is broad, layered, and deeply interconnected with every custody-related decision in Mississippi. It functions as the statewide command center that ensures each inmate, regardless of background or risk level, is placed in a facility that aligns with the system's legal, security, and operational standards. Before an inmate ever steps inside Mississippi State Penitentiary, Parchman, the first and most decisive stage of their journey is the classification process. This process determines everything that comes next: where they will be housed, how they will be supervised, what programs they can access, and whether they can safely coexist with other inmates inside the system. For many people, classification is an invisible step, a routine administrative action that happens behind the scenes. But in reality, classification is one of the most complex, detail-driven, and consequential processes within the Mississippi Department of Corrections, MDOC. It is the gateway through which every inmate must pass before the decision is made to transfer or place them into a specific facility like Parchman. Classification begins the moment an inmate enters MDOC custody, whether they come from a county jail after sentencing, from another state facility, or through a direct transfer. At the intake center, often located at Central Mississippi Correctional Facility (CMCF), for women and certain male inmates, or Region 1 and Region 2 hubs for others, inmates are processed through a series of evaluations. These evaluations are not random. They follow strict guidelines, forms, and scoring systems that have been developed to ensure fairness, consistency, and safety throughout the correctional environment. One of the core objectives of classification is determining an inmate's security level. MDOC uses a tiered classification system ranging from minimum security to maximum security. Each level reflects an inmate's risk of escape, likelihood of violence, sentence length, past disciplinary history, and overall behavior. Security level decisions are based on a combination of objective scores and professional judgment. For example, an inmate with significant violent charges may automatically be flagged for higher security placement, while others might be assigned based on patterns of behavior such as repeated altercations or attempts to influence other inmates. Another major component of classification is the assessment of criminal history and current charges. The nature of an inmate's crime heavily influences placement decisions. Individuals convicted of serious violent offenses, such as homicide or aggravated assault, typically require higher levels of security and monitoring. Those with long sentences may be placed in facilities like Parchman that are designed for long-term housing. Meanwhile, inmates with non-violent charges may be eligible for lower security units or specialized reentry programs, depending on their overall profile. MDOC classification officers analyze the entire criminal background, including juvenile history, probation violations, and past incarcerations, to build a complete risk picture. behavioral and disciplinary records also play a critical role. MDOC does not rely solely on the crime that placed someone into custody, they consider how the person behaves once inside. Inmates who demonstrate cooperative behavior, avoid conflicts, and follow facility rules may be scored for lower security placement. In contrast, individuals who display violence, manipulate the system, or engage in contraband activity may be placed in higher security levels or transferred to more structured facilities like Parchman. Classification is dynamic, meaning that an inmate's level can change over time based on conduct, allowing inmates to improve their status or face additional restrictions. Another essential element of classification is gang affiliation assessment, monitored carefully by the Security Threat Group, STG, Intelligence Division. Mississippi prisons, like many around the country, manage several recognized gangs, including national-level groups and local organizations. Classification teams evaluate tattoo identifiers, documented behavior, past associations, and intelligence reports to determine whether an inmate is affiliated with any group. This information is crucial because gang conflicts directly impact housing decisions. The classification process attempts to separate rivals, avoid placing enemies in the same unit, and identify individuals who may need protective housing. In some cases, confirmed or suspected gang membership is enough to trigger a transfer to Parchman, where the facility layout allows for more effective monitoring and separation. Mental and physical health evaluations are another cornerstone of classification. Upon arrival, inmates undergo medical screenings, psychological assessments, and if necessary, interviews with mental health professionals. These assessments determine whether an inmate has conditions requiring specialized care, such as chronic illnesses, disabilities, or psychiatric disorders. MDOC is responsible for ensuring inmates receive appropriate treatment, and this responsibility directly influences placement decisions. If an inmate requires long-term medical support or has a mental health condition needing structured supervision, they may be transferred to a facility capable of providing that care. Parchman's medical units, although stretched, remain a primary hub for inmates whose care exceeds the capacity of county jails or smaller facilities. In addition to immediate assessments, classification considers housing restrictions and separation needs. Some inmates cannot be housed near co-defendants, victims' families, former associates, or individuals with whom they have a known conflict. The classification team uses available records, court documents, and intelligence reports to outline who the inmate must be kept separate from. These restrictions play a large role in deciding whether Parchman is the most suitable placement, as its size and multiple units allow MDOC to manage inmates with complex separation needs. Another important dimension of classification involves program eligibility. Certain programs, such as educational courses, substance abuse treatment, vocational training, faith-based rehabilitation, or work programs, are only available at specific locations. Inmates who qualify for or require these programs may be transferred accordingly. For example, an inmate approved for agricultural training might be assigned to Parchman due to its long-standing farm operations and structured work programs. Similarly, those needing intensive drug rehabilitation may be placed in a unit that specializes in treatment, which sometimes involves a transfer to Parchman. Finally, the classification process is not a one-time event. It is ongoing and constantly reviewed. MDOC conducts periodic reclassifications, sometimes every 90 to 180 days, depending on an inmate's behavior, disciplinary record, program completion, or changes in legal status. These reassessments can lead to transfers, upgrades, or downgrades in security level. For many inmates, changes in classification are the direct reason they end up at Parchman, often after months or years in another facility. Once an inmate has been approved for transfer, whether due to classification changes, court orders, medical needs, or security concerns, the next major step is the transportation operation. This stage is one of the most carefully controlled and protocol-driven parts of the entire correctional system. Moving an inmate from one facility to another may seem simple on the surface, but behind each transfer is a web of planning, documentation, timing, and security measures designed to prevent escape, protect the public, and ensure the safe arrival of the inmate. For transfers heading to Mississippi State Penitentiary, Parchman, these procedures are even more strict, because many of the individuals being transported are entering one of the highest security environments in the state. The process begins long before the transport bus arrives. MDOC's Transportation and Logistics Unit first receives a movement order, which includes detailed information about the inmate, their name, identification number, security classification, medical notes, behavioral risks, and any special instructions. This may include escape history, gang involvement, or whether the inmate requires medical equipment like inhalers, insulin, or mobility aids. Every detail matters. Even a minor oversight, like failing to note a medical condition, could compromise the transport or jeopardize the inmate's health. Transport teams are assigned based on the type of transfer. High-risk inmates may require more officers, additional restraints, or specialized vehicles. Each officer on the transport team is trained in secure movement procedures, vehicle safety checks, emergency response, communication protocols, and how to handle disruptive behavior. Before departure, officers conduct a full briefing, reviewing the inmate list, planned routes, estimated travel times, and designated checkpoints. These briefings are essential because no transport is treated as routine. Vehicles are inspected thoroughly. Transport buses, vans, or secure SUVs undergo a checklist review that includes locking mechanisms, window integrity, engine function, tire condition, communication systems, and the onboard camera setup if present. Officers verify that restraints, handcuffs, waist chains, ankle shackles, are available and functioning properly. For higher security transfers, the team may use reinforced vehicles with built-in partitions separating inmates from officers. When it is time to load inmates, officers follow strict protocols. The inmate's identity must be verified multiple times through wristbands, documentation, and verbal confirmation. Each inmate is searched thoroughly to prevent contraband from being brought onto the transport vehicle. Depending on the inmate's classification, they may be fitted with restraints at the wrists, waist, and ankles. Officers use a standardized process to ensure restraints are secure but not excessively tight or dangerous. Inmates are seated according to their risk level. High-risk individuals are placed in the most controlled section, often toward the back and separated from others. Medium and low-risk inmates may sit together but still under constant observation. Officers never disclose the precise route to inmates, maintaining operational security. Before departure, the officer in charge logs the time, vehicle number, inmate roster, and route into MDOC's tracking system. One of the most important aspects of transportation is route secrecy and unpredictability. Transport teams typically avoid predictable patterns. They may vary their departure times, adjust routes to avoid congested or high-risk areas, and follow MDOC guidelines that limit stops. The goal is to reduce the chances of escape attempts, ambushes, or interference. If transports must pause for fuel or restroom needs, officers select secure locations and carefully control inmate movement. During transit, communication is constant. Officers stay in touch with MDOC command, local law enforcement, and receiving facilities. Any delays, medical issues, or behavioral problems must be reported immediately. Transport vehicles are equipped with radios, GPS tracking, and sometimes onboard cameras to ensure accountability. In the event of an emergency, such as a vehicle malfunction, medical crisis, or weather hazard, officers must follow established protocols to secure inmates before seeking assistance. Some inmates require specialized transfer conditions. Those with medical needs may travel with documented medication, medical devices, or additional monitoring. In some cases, a medical officer may accompany the transport. High-risk or high-profile inmates may be transported alone in a reinforced vehicle, escorted by additional units, or even accompanied by armed support vehicles depending on the threat assessment. When the transport approaches Parchman, officers notify the facility ahead of time. Parchman's intake staff prepare to receive the inmates, verifying documentation and clearing space in the intake area. Upon arrival, the transport vehicle pulls into a secure sally port, an enclosed, gated area designed to prevent escape. Only after the gates close behind the vehicle do officers begin unloading inmates. This step mirrors the loading process: identity verification, restraint checks, and controlled movement into the intake building. Once the inmates are handed over to Parchman personnel, officers complete transfer paperwork, confirm custody exchange, and log the transport as complete. Every movement is documented for legal and accountability purposes. Officers then inspect the vehicle again to ensure no contraband, restraints, or items were left behind before returning to the road. Transportation operations may seem like a simple transfer on the surface, but in reality, it is a highly orchestrated process driven by precision, communication, and safety protocols. It is one of the most essential components of maintaining order and ensuring that every inmate movement within the Mississippi correctional system is carried out securely and efficiently. The moment an inmate arrives at Mississippi State Penitentiary, Parchman, is one of the most significant transitions in the entire corrections process. Everything changes at this point. the environment, the rules, the level of supervision, and the expectations. For many inmates, stepping into Parchman marks the beginning of a new chapter, often more intense and demanding than anything they experienced at a county jail or regional facility. The arrival process is designed to establish control, confirm identity, and ensure each inmate is placed exactly where they need to be. Nothing about it is casual or improvised. Every step follows a strict, time-tested procedure. The arrival begins the moment the transport vehicle pulls into Parchman's secure Sally Port, a double-gated entry system that prevents escape and controls all movement in and out of the prison. Officers close the outer gate behind the transport vehicle before the inner gate opens. This creates a controlled environment where no one enters or leaves without clearance. The atmosphere inside the Sally Port is heavy with security. High fences layered with razor wire, surveillance cameras covering every angle, and officers positioned strategically to oversee the transfer. Once the transport vehicle is secured, Parchman's intake officers approach. They begin by verifying the transport team's credentials, confirming movement paperwork, and cross-checking the inmate roster. No inmate steps off the bus until every detail matches the documentation sent ahead by MDOC. This verification step protects against identity errors, illegal transfers, and any discrepancies that could compromise safety. The unloading process is slow and methodical. Inmates exit the vehicle one by one under close supervision. They are restrained, escorted, and positioned in a designated intake area where they can be monitored collectively. At this stage, inmates are reminded to remain silent and follow every instruction. Parchman's intake officers maintain a strict tone, not for intimidation but to establish authority and minimize confusion. The first major step of intake is identity confirmation. Officers verify the inmate's name, MDOC number, birth date, classification documents, and transfer order. Wristbands or ID cards are checked and replaced if damaged. Any discrepancies must be resolved immediately before the process continues. Next comes one of the most critical parts of the arrival procedure, the search and contraband check. Inmates undergo a thorough search to ensure they are not bringing prohibited items into the facility. This includes clothing removal, visual inspection, and the collection of any personal property. Every possession is logged, sealed, and recorded. County-issued clothing is removed, and inmates are issued Parchman uniforms. This uniform change serves two purposes. It ensures consistency within the facility and signals the inmate's official entry into Parchman custody. Following the search, inmates proceed to medical screening. Nurses and medical staff conduct a series of checks, including vital signs, quick medical history review, medication verification, and screening for urgent conditions. If an inmate has chronic conditions, injuries, or mental health concerns, this is the moment they are documented. Medical staff note whether the inmate requires further evaluation, specialized housing, or immediate follow-up care. The medical intake is not optional. Every inmate goes through it regardless of their previous health records. After medical evaluation, inmates undergo mental health screening. This may involve brief interviews, written assessments, or questions designed to identify risk factors such as depression, suicidal thoughts, anxiety, or past psychological conditions. If needed, mental health staff may place an inmate under observation or refer them to specialized units for closer monitoring. One of the most defining components of arrival at Parchman is the housing assignment process. Based on the inmate's classification level, behavioral history, gang affiliation status, medical needs, and separation requirements, the intake team determines where the inmate will be placed. Parchman is divided into multiple units, such as Unit 29, Unit 30, and others, each with a different security function. Some units house high-risk individuals, others focus on long-term housing, while some are reserved for inmates with special medical or mental health needs. The classification team may review an inmate's file again at this point to ensure the placement is accurate. If there are concerns about conflicts with other inmates, staff notify the appropriate personnel to avoid potential safety issues. This step can determine whether an inmate enters a high-security environment, a general population unit, or a specialized housing area. Before inmates are escorted to their assigned units, they go through a brief orientation phase. This includes instructions on facility rules, expected behavior, daily schedules, mealtime procedures, disciplinary consequences, and communication guidelines. Inmates may also receive basic hygiene items, bedding, and their assigned identification materials. Once orientation is complete, officers escort inmates individually or in small groups to their housing units. The walk through Parchman's long hallways and secured gates can be an intense experience, marked by strict supervision and an environment designed for maximum control. Upon reaching their assigned unit, inmates meet the correctional staff responsible for overseeing their daily routines. They are shown their cells, informed of their responsibilities, and integrated into the facility's structure. For many inmates, the arrival at Parchman represents a stark shift from county jail life. The level of surveillance is higher, the routines more rigid, and the environment more demanding. The arrival process is structured to ensure that every inmate enters the system safely, securely, and with clear understanding of their new reality inside one of Mississippi's most notorious and historically significant correctional institutions. When a high-risk inmate arrives at Mississippi State Penitentiary, commonly known as Parchman, the facility activates a set of strict safety and security protocols designed to minimize danger to staff, the inmate, and the general population. These measures are especially focused during the first 48 hours, which are considered the most critical period for assessing risk, behavior, and medical needs. High-risk arrivals may include individuals with violent histories, known gang affiliations, escape attempts, or those transferred due to disciplinary issues from other institutions. Because of this, Parchman uses a multi-layered system to protect both security and order. Separate holding and controlled entry. Upon arrival, high-risk inmates are not immediately placed into the general intake area. Instead, they are taken to designated secure holding zones, physically separated from other new arrivals. These areas are built with reinforced doors, surveillance cameras, and limited access points to ensure maximum control during intake processing. Enhanced supervision. For the first 48 hours, the inmate is under continuous observation. Officers trained in high-risk management monitor movement, behavior, and communication. Welfare checks occur frequently, and interactions are carefully restricted to reduce any potential threat. Immediate risk review. During this period, security staff conduct rapid assessments that evaluate behavioral stability, known conflicts or enemies, medical or psychological concerns, gang-related risks, escape or self-harm potential. The goal is to determine the safest placement for the inmate within Parchman's complex. Controlled movement and search procedures. Any movement, whether to medical screening, classification interviews, or temporary housing, is done with escort teams and follows strict search procedures. This ensures that no weapons or contraband can be brought into the facility during the transfer phase. Transition to long-term housing. Only after the 48-hour high-risk observation window is completed, and once initial evaluations are reviewed, does Parchman decide whether the inmate will be assigned to restrictive housing, placed under close custody, or transitioned into a general population unit with tailored precautions. These combined security steps help maintain stability within one of the most challenging correctional environments in the United States. While much of the discussion around Mississippi State Penitentiary, Parchman, focuses on logistics, security, and administrative processes, it is critical to understand that every transfer has a profound human impact. For the inmate being moved, a transfer is far more than a change of address. It represents a psychological, emotional, and social upheaval. It affects family relationships, personal safety, and mental well-being. The human dimension of transfers is often invisible to the outside world, but it is a defining feature of the correctional experience, shaping how inmates adjust to life inside one of the country's most notorious penitentiaries. One of the most immediate human effects of a transfer is disruption of family and social connections. County jails are often located closer to an inmate's home, allowing regular visits from family, friends, and legal counsel. When an inmate is transferred to Parchman, which is remote and geographically isolated, maintaining these relationships becomes challenging. Travel for family members may be long, expensive, and physically demanding. Phone call restrictions and visitation schedules add additional barriers. For many inmates, the sudden distance from loved ones can lead to feelings of isolation, depression, and anxiety. This emotional strain does not only affect the inmate. Families are also impacted, struggling with the uncertainty of the transfer, difficulty in maintaining contact, and the stress of navigating Parchman's strict visitation procedures. Psychological stress is another major consequence. Transfers to Parchman can be abrupt, sometimes happening without much prior notice. Inmates may leave county jails in the middle of the night, under heavy restraints, and with minimal explanation. The uncertainty of not knowing where they will be housed, who they will interact with, or what their living conditions will be can provoke intense anxiety. Once at Parchman, the environment itself amplifies this stress. High fences, razor wire, surveillance cameras, and a regimented schedule create a sense of confinement that can be overwhelming, especially for those entering a maximum security facility for the first time. Adjustment to a stricter environment is another critical factor. Unlike smaller facilities or county jails, Parchman operates with a higher degree of structure and discipline. Rules are strictly enforced, schedules are rigid, and deviations can result in immediate disciplinary action. Inmates must quickly learn new routines for meals, work, recreation, and cell management. Those unprepared for this transition may struggle to comply, which can inadvertently escalate disciplinary problems and create additional stress. The human cost of adjusting to such an environment is often underestimated but can be profound, particularly for first-time offenders or individuals unaccustomed to long-term incarceration. Safety concerns also play a significant role in the human impact of transfers. Parchman houses some of the most dangerous and high-risk inmates in Mississippi. New arrivals may be vulnerable to intimidation, bullying, or targeted attacks until their standing within the facility is understood. This vulnerability can heighten fear and anxiety, causing inmates to be hypervigilant, withdrawn, or aggressive. The fear of violence or retaliation is a constant presence, especially during the first few weeks when the inmate's position in the facility's informal social hierarchy is not yet established. Loss of autonomy and personal control is another psychological factor. Transfers often strip inmates of familiar routines, personal possessions, and even their small comforts. Property may be confiscated or limited, clothing replaced with standard uniforms, and daily choices strictly restricted. For many, these losses contribute to a sense of helplessness, frustration, and diminished self-esteem. The sudden shift in personal agency can exacerbate mental health challenges, particularly for those already dealing with anxiety, depression, or post-traumatic stress. Opportunities for rehabilitation or personal growth can also be impacted by transfers. Certain programs, educational, vocational, or therapeutic, may be disrupted if the inmate is moved between facilities. Continuity of care is crucial for progress in rehabilitation programs, and transfers can interrupt momentum. For instance, an inmate enrolled in a substance abuse or behavioral therapy course in a county facility may be forced to start over or wait for placement in a similar program at Parchman. Such disruptions can delay progress toward parole eligibility, completion of rehabilitation requirements, or successful reintegration into society upon release. Social dynamics within the prison environment also shape the human impact of transfers. New inmates must navigate complex social hierarchies, including relationships with gangs, cliques, and informal leadership structures. Missteps in these dynamics can result in isolation, intimidation, or conflict. High-risk transfers are often segregated initially for safety, which can protect them physically but may also heighten feelings of social isolation. For some inmates, these first 48 to 72 hours in separation units are extremely stressful, as they balance the need for safety with the desire to integrate into the general population. Finally, long-term psychological effects should be considered. Frequent transfers, repeated exposure to highly structured environments, or isolation can have lasting impacts on an inmate's mental health. Studies have shown that such stressors can increase the likelihood of depression, anxiety disorders, and post-traumatic stress symptoms. Even after adjustment, the experience of being moved under strict supervision can influence behavior, trust in authority, and willingness to engage in rehabilitation programs. In essence, while the logistical and operational aspects of transfers are highly visible, the human dimension is often underappreciated. Every movement to Parchman carries with it a complex mix of emotional, social, and psychological challenges. Understanding these effects is crucial for correctional staff, policymakers, and families, as it emphasizes the need for thoughtful procedures, adequate support, and programming designed to mitigate the negative impact of these necessary but disruptive transfers.